you. Hi, Rupert. Happy Tuesday.
Yeah.
I have a question related to the little big voice that we all have inside. Some people call it intuition, other people call it your gut. I call it voice or light or the language of God. And I'm just curious as to knowing that awareness and consciousness needs nothing and requires nothing. Where does that voice come from? And how do we really sink into it and believe it and trust it? And I asked that on the heels of just a quick anecdote. I got COVID a year ago and have been struggling with chronic fatigue, which is fabulous in my world. And so when some doctors didn't have a solution, I sought out a medical intuitive. And over the phone, she was actually able to psychically tell me what was wrong. She told me I was a teeth grinder, which I am. Too much information, I know. But she definitely listened to her voice, and she listened to the depths of her being and was able to communicate exactly where that fatigue was coming from. And I'm just wondering, how do we all do that? How do we all touch that? And where does that come from? Where is that voice? What is that voice?
It's true that awareness doesn't need anything. But as human beings, the natural state of a human being is to be an expression of the reality, the one from which it emerges. So that's the natural condition of a human being, to be an emanation of, an expression of that out of which it emerges, that in which it exists. And it's only the sense of separation that prevents us from being that. The sense of separation not only cuts us off from, not only do we feel the sense of separation cuts us off from the source from which we emerge, but it also cuts us off from everyone and everything else. So the voice that you're talking about is the voice or the intuition that arises in us as a representation of the one from which we emerge, and in whose service our life is ideally lived. So the voice of intuition is a representation. If we could personify the one, if we could personify infinite being, the voice you're speaking of is the representative of that one in each of our minds. And we all have that voice, but many of us don't listen to it, because the voice is so quiet, it can't really compete with the louder thoughts and feelings that occupy our attention. So many people override or simply don't hear that voice. But for those of us here whose minds are quieter, we're more in touch with it, more open to it. And indeed, if we have to make a decision, if we're faced with a kind of life-changing decision in our life to do with a relationship, for instance, a line of work, some big decision, those are the times when it's most important to be very quiet inside and try to listen to that, the deepest voice in us, the representative of the one. And the same is true in business. If you have a big decision to make, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this, you have all the information, that's everything that's on the surface of your mind. You gather all the information, you have to weigh it all up, but you're the decision you make is not just a result of assessing all the information. You have to assess all the information and then forget it, and you have to go be quiet. You have to listen to something deeper. And the yes or the no usually comes from deeper. And we override that voice at our peril. We find ourselves in a relationship 10 years later, and then we look back and you think, oh, that in the second week that voice said something and I didn't listen. You know, now 3 kids 10 years later, and
what I've been doing for the past 6 months is more on weekends, but actively and very consciously trying to pause. And when I hear the voice, even if I'm in the grocery store and it says, hey, get the bananas, or don't forget the cottage cheese, I listen. And whether it's because I need the bananas or not, it's just the retraining. I feel like it's really coming to a place of recognizing that it's the voice with a capital T instead of the ego's voice. And it's a very, very, very diligent and difficult process because there's lots of...
Yes. The purpose of the voice is to bring the qualities, if we can call them qualities, that are the nature of the one, the nature of being, into manifestation through us. Whereas the voice of the ego is to bring into manifestation the qualities that are the nature of the ego, the anxiety, the fears, the demands, the insecurities. So this voice is quieter, but its purpose is to bring these deeper qualities. They are impersonal qualities. Its purpose is to bring those qualities into manifestation through us. So it's very important in not just personal relationships, but in business, that one is guided by this voice. Then one's business, whatever the activity, whatever area you're involved in, ultimately your business is a vehicle through which these qualities are shared with humanity. It becomes a force for good in the world.
I guess was just very curious, and sorry to press this, but I guess what's very curious is that in what is really in reality meaningless situations in business, right? I mean, awareness doesn't care if I close this round of funding or get this client. It doesn't matter. I guess what I just find curious is when there is a pause, when there is the ability to pause and there is no voice and it's just blank, then obviously it's just, intelligence and experience and history and this form. But I guess to press this, it's where is that voice when there's no voice? And how do I sink deeper in to find the voice when I don't feel it or hear it?
The voice may... Where is that voice when there is no voice? It's the silence. Don't feel that the voice always needs to express itself as a voice. It could be that the absence of a voice at that particular moment, the absence of a particular direction to go in, is appropriate for that moment. Don't force the issue. Don't demand that would be, because then the ego is appropriating. Then you'll find that the voice that rises up will have been appropriated by the ego. The ego will start using it for its own means. So if there's no voice, just stay open and silent. It's time for a pause.
one of 56 glimpses, huh?
Yes, but this particular pause may have to last more than 4 seconds.
Thank you, Rupert.